I'm Derek Wheatley, and welcome to episode 88 of the Wheatley podcast. Thank you very much for joining us as always. It's very kind of you. Thank you very much to Ty Keller for coming on last week. Ty talked about some subjects were, quite heavy. He's become a carer in the last 2 years for his dad, and going through the pandemic and stuff like that as a carer. He described it very well, and one of those things where he described it as heavy as it is, he also described the joys that he had with his dad through it as well. So it was really interesting chat for us. And then we got to talk about music a lot. So obviously very important too. And we had a good crack with that. So thank you very much for coming on, Tig. If you are new to the podcast, maybe you could subscribe to our YouTube channel. That always helps. You don't have to. And obviously for any listener out there, thanks very much for your support. So we get into it for this week. Guest this week is a surfer, an adventurer, and a globetrotter, and her name is Grace Doyle. How are you, Grace?
Hi, Derek. Good. How are you?
I'm good. Is that a decent intro there? A surfer, a globetrotter, and an adventurer?
I think that's kind of accurate. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I stress out about it sometimes, the little introduction part, because I want to represent people correctly. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, but we'll get into it, Grace, and we can. Obviously, we're going to talk about all those things, but we always have our first two questions. Could you give us a short history of your upbringing, please?
Sure. So I grew up in Waterford in the southeast of Ireland. I have three older brothers. We grew up in the city, but we all loved swimming and water sports, and we used to travel out to the coast to Tramore a lot as a family. And eventually we moved there when I was 11. We were all competitive swimmers. So from a very young age, me and my three brothers would swim most of the week, maybe when we got a bit older, 10 hours a week in the morning before school and stuff like that.
Right.
We did lose my dad to cancer when I was 16.
Sorry.
So that was part of my upbringing, I suppose. And been living in Tramore ever since. And I've been living in different places since that for work and stuff, but yeah,
that's home. You mentioned competition there. Would you say, so you've got obviously this 4E, you and your three brothers, are you competitive yourself, plus are you all competitive against each other?
Yes. Well, you see, I have three older brothers and one is 1 year older than me, so growing up, we would have all done swimming and competed obviously in our own categories, but I guess there probably always would have been a bit of pushing each other as well within the family, who did better results and stuff like that, but not really in a sense. We always really support each other as well. It's just friendly, and stuff. And now that I surf, I took that up from my older brothers too. Two of them surf, one doesn't, and it's actually the one that's a year older than me again that we spend the most time surfing together, and he kind of encourages me a lot and wants me to do well, and it's really good. And we mess and compete with each other in the water for waves and stuff, but it's all fun. Healthy
competition. Yes, very good. So Grace, when did you first become aware of mental health?
I reckon it would have been obviously losing my dad at 16, which was quite a young age. Probably even leading up to that, kind of knowing it was coming was just really tough, because he had it and died within 4 months, so it was quite sudden. And I think just the years after that then is just kind of, I think when it happened, you deal with the people around you and you kind of get through it, but then it's kind of the aftermath when life goes on and you're kind of left with those feelings. And I might have come across mental health or thought about it earlier before that, because growing up as a swimmer and training that much and stuff brought up a lot of kind of, I suppose, being tired at school and missing out on different things with friends, but not necessarily anything out of the ordinary. And I think it was really just losing someone so close to you that you end up thinking a lot more about it.
Of course, yeah. It's one of those things that people talk about have come on here and talked about to do with competing at a young age, and the expectancy on your shoulders, your own expectancy for one thing, but then having parents, siblings, other relatives or friends that are have that kind of expectancy on you, I can't see, like, I can't say I was one of those people, but it must be very, very difficult for a young person or a teen, we'll say, to kind of shoulders that kind of burden, those responsibilities.
Like, I can see that point, but I think growing up, my biggest pressure was from myself. Like, I was just competitive with myself, and I always like wanted to be a high achiever at like everything I did. And I think like a lot of the time, yeah, I pushed myself too much, and people like my mom would be the opposite. Like, she would have said like, oh, don't put too much pressure on yourself. You did great. This is a great result. But I would always put the extra pressure on and want to do better. But yeah, like it can be a bit like, you know, you're going to this big event that you've trained for all year, and you know there's a lot of pressure on you in a way because you've put all of that time and effort into it. I just thinking back to the swimming days where you have your nationals at the end of the summer and you give up all your summer kind of fun stuff with your friends, like concerts and stuff, so that you go training. And so yeah, there's a bit of pressure and stuff that way. So it's not really just from yourself, it's kind of from all the external facts that like you've given up so much to get to this point, and then you just want to achieve what you want to achieve.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it makes sense. So you were a PE and maths teacher.
Yeah.
You decided then on a career break. What was the reason or reasons for that?
So I loved teaching. I used to teach PE and maths, as you said. And I was teaching up in the Midlands in Ireland, which is not good when you're a surfer. So
Yeah.
I really felt like I was just living for the weekends. I stuck it out for 4 years. I say stuck it out. I did have good times and I enjoyed it. But I just felt I was leading up to hoping to get a career break, and I had to do that time to be able to apply for one.
Okay.
Because I didn't want to lose my teaching position. I didn't know what I wanted really going forward. And I guess I just got really lucky in the sense that I went on the career break, and a friend of mine was working for a company which was kind of all remote working to do with like a booking software for tours and activities. So I kind of joined up with them, but mainly as a customer tech support. So very part-time, very aware that I might turn back to my job. They were just taking me on. So yeah, it went really well, and I was working remotely. I was traveling the world and still like doing this job, signing in from anywhere with Wi-Fi. And then I guess during the pandemic, they had to kind of, you know, let some people go, like all of us really could, well, basically just pause the business, I suppose. And then when it came back, well, I had to make the decision, go back teaching or hang on. And I just decided to hang on. And when they took us back, I moved into the sales side of things. So now I work with the same company, but just trying to sell the software. I'm really happy in the company because like I don't have to just live for the weekends, and where I'm like, you know, I can travel during the week if I want. I can surf wherever I want in terms of Ireland anyway, and just like drive around and kind of just be way more flexible. And I've just gone back from a few months away, and I was working and teaching and surfing over there. I was doing all three of the things over there that I like to do. So yeah, I'm kind of a go with the flow person, and I just haven't really looked back. Teaching is still always there for me as an option, but at the moment I'm happy.
Yeah, and it sounds ideal because we were chatting a bit before about that fact that you could do it remotely and do your traveling as well. I found, I never actually explained to you how I found you on Instagram actually. So if people aren't on Instagram, there's a little microscope button, and you hit that, and then you just get a little, you know, up the top, the search bar. And I literally typed in surfer. That's all I typed in. And you were the first person that came up. The first, I think it was a picture. Okay. And it was of you in Bali. So it obviously looked amazing. And then I saw the little Irish flag. So I was like, okay, this is a good opportunity to get someone on who's Irish and does the surfing and stuff. Yeah. If people were in Ireland, okay, so I know a couple of people who enjoy the you know, the idea of surfing anyway. Maybe they haven't quite got on the board yet, but they like the idea. Where are the spots that you like to go to in Ireland?
So yeah, I live in Waterford, and obviously I surf here a lot because I live here, but it's not the best place. Once you get to a certain level, it's not the best place to always surf. But I love to go to Sligo and Donegal or Clare and sometimes Kerry. So all the West Coast basically. That's
there. I think my friends were talking about Sligo. That seems to come up a lot in
Sligo just has a lot of options, like with the wind, like surfing depends a lot on wind and wind direction. And of course, swell, but obviously a lot of the swell gets to the northwest and west coast. But the Sligo has a lot of different spots facing different directions, as you can imagine, if you look at the map and all the nooks and crannies. Like, so you can always nearly always get some waves around Sligo. Whereas here, if the wind is going one particular way, it's going to be onshore everywhere because the coast kind of all faces the same way.
Yeah. It's quite a trip actually from Waterford to Sligo, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like a 4.5 hour trip. I actually drive there a lot. I do so many times I drive up and back to Sligo. Sometimes just for a day or 2 days. Like, so
Hey, look, if you have a passion for something that's kind of irrelevant, those kind of smaller things. Grace, let me read out the advert now. We'll get it out of the way and we'll get more into the surfing side of things. So just give us 30 seconds. Okay. Here we go. I don't know how I don't know this off by heart yet. Fusion Training Center, Monksland, Athlone, a place to train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, kickboxing, martial arts, and CrossFit. A great atmosphere with experienced coaches and a real sense of community. If you want to join the team, find us on Facebook at Fusion Training Center or drop in for a chat. Fusion Training Center, train like a warrior. I was so close. The fourth last word I messed up. Anyway, but yeah, obviously for the people who are in Athlone or the surrounding areas, that we're fully open now in there, so everybody can, give Martin a call if you want to do CrossFit, try something different, bit of jiu-jitsu. You might see me in there. It's all good. So obviously I kind of know the answer to the first part of this question, but where and when was the first place that you surfed?
yeah, Tremor for sure. I don't even remember like when exactly, because I was always into like the sea and swimming and bodyboarding, and I was a beach lifeguard for many years, so I would have done the surf life saving sport as well. So I reckon it was like 9, 8, 9, 10. I was on a bodyboard for sure, maybe even younger, and then I probably just started borrowing a board or something from my brother, one of my brothers. I can't even remember. And then I do remember getting to a point like 12. I was probably well hooked, like, oh, I want to get good at surfing. Swimming always kind of came first, though, still until my late teens. So surfing was kind of like more of a hobby and less of a sport for me. And it still is a hobby, but now I kind of have been doing a few competitions over the last few years. But yeah, I just remembered kind of, I think you just get to a point in surfing. It's kind of a tough sport to learn. Like it's quite, it really tests your patience. Like if a lot of people try and they give up, but if you keep at it and you get to a certain point, then it's kind of like no going back, because you're just so addicted to wanting to do that again and get better and better. So yeah, I reckon around 11 or 12 was when that kind of started for me.
There's I had a Kieran Davern on. So Kieran would be my I do jiu-jitsu, so he's my coach's coach. So he's a black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And when he came on here, I was talking to him about what he likes about jiu-jitsu and the usual kind of questions that I'm asking you now. But he said that he loves the lifestyle of the jiu-jitsu thing with surfing. He mentioned surfing and he mentioned like flip-flop kind of lifestyle. And I wanted to kind of ask him about that, but obviously the conversation goes whichever way it goes, and I didn't really get to kind of dig it into it. But when I think of jiu-jitsu, when you mentioned there about how tough surfing is, and I think of jiu-jitsu as being very technical, it's very difficult sport to do. It's very easy to get frustrated and you're in the middle of it, like you said, in surfing. But is there an element when you are surfing, maybe not competition, I suppose, but just when you're out surfing, of mindfulness, of a kind of, like the Zen-like quality that people talk about?
For sure. Like I just feel like you're kind of like immersed in nature, and there's something so powerful and strong about nature. And there's so many studies gone into how like the ocean is or the water in general, but the ocean in particular is such a healing ground for many people, and adults and kids with disabilities and learning difficulties, that there's just been so many studies on that anyway. But I didn't need a study to tell me that like the feelings that you get when you're in the ocean, it does sort of I feel like a sense of calmness. So I've obviously had some anxiety throughout the years. Everyone does, about different things, work, this, I suppose losing people close to you, and like being in the water for sure. Like just, it kind of switches your brain off. I feel like I go surfing and I leave whatever it is on the shore, and it's you mightn't even be thinking about anything, but you're just sort of like in a Zen mode, like you put it. which is kind of tricky sometimes when you're trying to get better and compete and push yourself, but like which is okay too. You can kind of switch between the both, but sometimes I just go surfing for totally different reasons. I'll go because I want to switch off and get in the water and feel the cold and feel the energy, you know. It's like an energy that you just feel. And then other times I'm kind of ready to go and train more so, you know. So
they're the way I watch a lot of films, okay, so but the way if surfing is depicted in films, it's very much a case of they tend to shoot it when the surfer is out kind of past the waves. I suppose they're sitting up on their board and everything is, you know, sunshine and peace and stuff, and it does sell it as such a beautiful thing to do, you know, regardless of the actual part where you're trying to, you know, find the wave. And I'm not going to get the terminology right, so excuse me for that. But when you're just out there, the thing about, you were mentioning about the water, I recently started doing some cold water. I wouldn't call it swimming, but dipping, you know, that kind of
same idea, like just being in the water. Like,
yeah, and it's that kind of what you were talking about, the studies of being in the water, the cold water, how it does help you, helps mental health, it helps weight loss. There's so many things all these studies that do. Your connection then to the sea obviously started back way back when you were, that made it sound terrible, a few years back when you were young, going to Tremor all the time. It seems like it was a natural extension for you to do something more than you were obviously doing your swimming, you were going to the sea and stuff. Surfing seems to be the next extension. Is that a correct statement, or was it less than that? Was the fact that your brothers were doing that and you decided, well, this looks like fun, I can do this, bit of competition maybe, and you go for it?
No, I think I would have always been drawn to the ocean no matter what. But obviously there's an element of, my family were doing it, so it was an easier to keep going with it. But for sure, like I was already kind of sea swimming, as I mentioned, being beach lifeguard. Surf lifesaving was basically sea swimming, sea paddling, like competing and training with all other people in the sea. And there's so many things in Tremor that you can be a part of. Like if I wasn't into surfing, there's other things you can get involved in. So I think I would have always opted for that. But I'm really grateful that my family moved to Tremor, because otherwise I would have just still been in the city, and maybe growing up would have been harder to come out all the time. So I'm glad that as a family we made that decision to move out. And even now, like I surf, but I do some other things in the ocean. Like I've recently just joined the sea rescue, which means I'm training to be in the RNLI and things like that, because I just love anything to do with the ocean. And but going back to such a young age, I would have been swimming. We have a picture in my house, in my other sitting room there, just of when we're jumping in at the Gillamine, which is a cove that you swim by in Waterford. And I was only about 5 or 6 years old. And so I was swimming back, jumping into the ocean back from 4 or 5 years old. Yeah.
That scares me to think about me doing that. But you actually mentioned already about you were living in the Midlands. Is it kind of unthinkable for you to be that far away from the sea again? Is it just that you need to be close to it?
Like, exactly. I feel like that just made me realize how much I think I always was going to want to live by the sea, and that was always a temporary place for me, and I didn't expect to be there for 4 years. But there was no point in me just living for the weekend. So now I'd love to, I am living in Tremor at the moment, but I'd love to get my own place here sometime, or closer to one of the surf spots around Ireland, like Sligo, Kerry, there. But obviously my family and friends are here, so here is the first choice.
Yeah, I think you mentioned about, everyday anxieties, that we all have. When you do go out to, whether it's Sligo or wherever it might be, around the world, is the surfboard the kind of escape from, maybe any kind of mental health problems is probably a bit strong, but those anxieties, to get out in the sea, be on that surfboard and be able to just escape the thing, because again, it's going back to kind of mindfulness and just allowing yourself to be, somewhere else, mentally, really.
Yeah, no, you're right. Like there's been times in my life where, like I've been upset about something, this, that, or the other. I remember one in particular, my brother was like, come on, let's just go surfing. Like, And it just really helped. Like I really didn't want to go, didn't want to do anything. It's one of those, like, you just want to lie on the couch and curl up in a ball. Like,
Yeah.
so won't go into details, but just the fact that it did work. Like I went to the water and had a good time. Maybe not even an amazing time, but enough of a break and enough for me to break out of my mood and just to, yeah, like I think it's really powerful, like, thing to have in your life. And for some people, maybe it's running, or maybe it's rock climbing, or whatever. I do think surfers and anyone in the ocean has the added advantage of the fact that cold water is so powerful in mental health. Like I've always really noticed it. I've always been so aware of it, that like, even if you really don't feel like it, sometimes it's good to get in, because I've never ever regretted getting into the water or having a surf, no matter how bad the waves are. We get really bad waves down here sometimes, and just get in anyway. It's just it may seem silly to onlookers, like, what are they doing, like, just sitting around in these crap waves, but like, it's more than surfing. Sometimes it's just a lifestyle and a way of living, and something that you feel like, if I don't surf for a couple of days, which is how I feel right now, it's like you get angsty, you just want to get in again, and you're always like trying to find a day where you can go surf for a time. So yeah, it's really powerful.
I think people talk about that with jiu-jitsu as well. If they miss a couple of days, they kind of get a little bit, like you say, angsty, or just a little bit wound up. They're not quite who they like themselves to be. I want to ask you about this, because this is something that's come up. I think it's come up in the podcast before. I've talked to someone today about it. Right. So this is going to make me sound afraid of everything, but sometimes, yeah. But so in the sea, even if it's in Ireland, I think we have this, I have an imagination, and the person I was talking today clearly has the same imagination, where we get into the water and we think, what's underneath us? This might be in Coosan Point here in Athlone in the lake. It might be in, up in Dublin there, whatever, in the sea. So when you go around the world, there's different things underneath you. Okay. Just bear with me on this, right? I'm not going to turn it into Jaws kind of thing, but I knew you were in Bali. So I said, right, are there sharks in Bali? I don't know. This is my ignorance coming through, but I looked it up, and there are sharks, but there's none, great white sharks, things like that. Would you not be freaked out, okay, if you were in the water, and I'm not talking about great white shark, it could be a completely harmless thing, but say an 8-foot shark was next to the board. Does that not terrify you?
It's happened to me before. It wasn't an 8-foot shark, it was smaller. So when you mentioned that I was in Bali, most of that trip was actually to Mentawai Islands, which is even more remote, and it's off of Sumatra, which is Indonesia still. But it's full of like a sea life, which that's why I don't get too worried, as I feel like the sharks are well fed. There's lots of fish, lots of things for them to eat. I really feel like, if I haven't heard many stories from out there, but if anyone gets in trouble there, it's usually the sharks are confused or it's a mistake. So you just have to, I suppose, be wary, but not let it ruin your chances of surfing some of the best like waves in the world. I've had a shark swim towards me. It was an evening, I was nearly finished, and I just saw it. And I remember I was sitting on my board, I wasn't lying, and I just stayed sitting there and I stayed looking at it. And it was just kind of swimming towards me, but it wasn't like, it didn't have any urgency about it. So I just had this calmness about me. I don't know why. I just had a feeling it was going to swim away, and it did. So yeah, like, it's never happened to me though with a really like scary big white, or like great white shark or anything. It looked like a baby reef, like a small grey reef shark, which tend to look like baby great whites. But I know from how shallow it was, it couldn't really have been. But no, I at that time I wasn't. Another time I got a bit scared because there was a huge manta ray right underneath me, but all I could see was black shadow, and I didn't know like if it was what it was for like a split second. But that scared me a bit more than seeing the shark coming from far.
It's I know that there's that, we hear the horror stories and that, and sharks aren't out to hunt humans and all that. But it's just that thing in your mind of seeing films or hearing like this one story that had happened.
No, like, it's scary, but it is true that like we're in their territory, like we're in their home, so you can't like you can't be mad at a shark for, and on top of that, like we aggravate sharks by having shark cages and dangling meat in front of them. So, you know, there was another time where I was in Hawaii and I was doing some tow surfing with a friend, and we were out on the outer reefs in Hawaii, like on the jet ski, and all these boats were passing by with the shark cages on it. And I was like, oh, great. Like, that's what would make me nervous, because I'm like, there is clearly sharks around trying, like, being aggravated here. So that's more worrying. And that's inflicted by humans, really. But obviously, yeah, sharks are scary and you don't want to be in a situation with one, but I don't really think about it that much.
Yeah, I suppose the experiences of being in the water for so many years, it doesn't really, it doesn't compute as like it does for me. How important is travel for you?
I don't know about important. I love to travel. Like, you know, I mean, I feel very lucky that I've been able to. And to be honest, it's the surfing that's brought me around the world, like various competitions, and then just me deciding, like, you know, okay, I'd love to go surf this spot. Like, I've heard so much about it. And then going on my own to meet people or meeting people over there. In general, I've traveled a lot of the places by myself. So yeah, and it's kind of a way to meet new people that you know, are also into surfing, and you're seeing all these different parts of the world that I might not have ever gone to otherwise if I didn't have a passion for surfing and a reason for going there. But I do love traveling and the excitement of it, and yeah, and it's always exciting then to come back home as well. So there's so much positive stuff about traveling. You just meet so many nice new people, and you get to experience all the different cultures. And I think that's one of the big parts, is experiencing a different culture and seeing how other people in the world live. And traveling has made me appreciate a lot of the stuff we have here in Ireland and at home as well, because when you travel to places like Indonesia, and, you know, I've been to Central America a lot, there's just so much differences, and you see a lot of more, differences, like in poorness that maybe we don't have in certain elements. And you also think, like, you know, people over there live life in such a different way and are so much happier with simpler things, and it makes you also kind of think, you know, in the Western world or in Ireland, some people are caught in the rat race or whatever people say. You know, it's kind of like makes you open up your eyes and maybe chill out a little bit more at home, and kind of like appreciate the good things and what you have in your life.
And I like the idea that you travel alone, the kind of the independence of it, and not, you know, relying on someone else's timetable. It must be very freeing for you.
That's it. I was when I was just in Indonesia there, I extended my visa to stay longer just because I felt like it, and there was a good swell coming. My work was going okay. I was working remotely. So yeah, I extended, and if I was with people or had other plans, I wouldn't really maybe been able to do that. Saying that, it's nice to have people now and again. If you are traveling with someone, it's nice to share the experiences as well. But I do like to travel alone and maybe meet people. Sometimes you meet the same people or old friends and things like that. So yeah, there's something to be said for both. But yeah, definitely would say I've been a very independent traveler.
Yeah, that's great. And like my experience with traveling, like I've been to a few places, not a huge amount, but I've always found it very stressful from the get-go, really. The idea of, like, you know, getting the tickets, but getting a decent place to stay, and then having to go to the airport. And, you know, I'm not going to go through the whole lot, but it's quite a stressful time for me. How do you approach the airport? Because you sound quite positive about the experiences and how good it is, but then there is like airports and stuff. What are they like for you?
I wasn't really talking about the airports when I, like, in the sense that, like, that's the hardest part, because I'm usually traveling with 3 to 4 surfboards, anywhere from 2 to 4 surfboards in a board bag, which is super heavy and hard to carry, especially on my own. And I usually have a bag or a suitcase as well, and I usually have a backpack as well with my laptop in it. So by the time I get to my destination, my back's usually like in bits, and I have a lot of stretching to do. But that's the hardest part. So when I find an airline that treats me good and, like, takes my board without charging me a bomb, I'm like, I stick with that airline, like, because I'm happy. So yeah, like, it's some airlines just cause some trouble with it, and it just depends really on the day and who's at the desk. And that's the hard part, I guess, and my favorite part of a holiday. is when I like get to the airport, and when you check those boards in and they're being checked through to like your final destination, and I'm just so happy. I always like text home to my mom. I'm like, oh, my boards are gone through. Like I'm on my holidays.
Yeah, they're not the, you know, I suppose I wouldn't speak for every listener, but we wouldn't normally worry about those kind of things where we're going, and something so you know, big and bulky and things like that. I was reading a couple of places that some of the favorite places you've been to.
Yeah.
I suppose they all tie in with surfing anyway. These favorite spots. Where would you say are some of your favorite spots?
Oh, I don't know. I think Indonesia and I think Mexico were two of my top favorites. I absolutely loved Mexico and Indonesia. I've been going back to every year for the last 4 or 5 years. I love both of them. Like Indonesia is quite big, so I'll narrow it down to like the Mentawai Islands, which is an amazing surf area. It's some of the best waves in the world. And Mexico, I just love like the whole lifestyle in Mexico, and you know, the food, the music, the surfing, the whole lifestyle is just amazing, and it's really cheap as well for us.
Yeah, which helps always. You also mentioned Japan. I wanted to bring up Japan. Someone asked me on this before what my, you know, ideal holiday or destination would be, and I said Japan. What was it about Japan that you found so?
I kind of forgot to mention Japan only because I was there 2 times, but they were both for the World Surfing Games with the Irish team, like one year after the other in 2 different locations in Japan. But as you can imagine, when you go to these competitions, your timetable is fairly packed, and even if you're knocked out of the competition, you're supporting the rest of the team. But we didn't get to really enjoy some of the time the last time in a place called Miyazaki in Japan. And it was just beautiful. I was very surprised that it was quite tropical in the sense, like similar to the Mentawais. Like it had some of the similar feels to it at certain parts that I didn't realize how beautiful Japan was. And the people are just so nice. And the country, like the country I feel is so far ahead of other countries in so many ways. Like they really are strong on the, you know, leading a good life. I can't think like, you know, good karma and stuff. And I feel like it's very obvious in a lot of things. I remember never forget seeing a skate ramp at a beach, and it said on the sign, the skate ramp is closed at 5 o'clock. And there was just one little tiny chain going across it. And nobody was on it. Like it was packed and then nobody was on it. And I thought to myself, if that was Ireland now, there would be people after jumping over the chain and they'd be still on the skate ramp. But because like they just are such rule followers. But that's beside the point. My point is Japan is just like such a good, like really nice place to explore. Like it's so big. There's so many things to do and the people are just amazing. And of course the food, like if you like sushi and
They have a beautiful respect for their elderly as well, which is always really. And again, my love for Japan goes back to watching a lot of Japanese films. Most things go back to watching a lot of films at this stage. So, for when could you explain actually, if you don't mind, for people who do not know about competing in surfing, what's like how do I frame this question? Is there like when you go out when you get your board and get into the water, is there a timer set? What's the story?
Yeah, so the way it works is it depends on the level of competition, but in Ireland, like say we have 20-minute heats. If you look at a World Surf League event, they often do 30-minute heats, I think, or sometimes even longer, 40 minutes. But so you have your 20 minutes to catch waves, and they score you on your 2 best scoring waves. So if you do like a good score on one wave, then you have a bad score, you're trying to get like a second good score all of the time. So then and then if you have 2 kind of good scores, you're trying to beat that again. So it's scored out of 10. So, you know, if you're in the 7, 8, 9, you're in the excellent range, etc. If you're in 5 or 4, you're in the good range kind of thing. And that's what you do, and you're competing against other surfers. So there's rules against like priority. So whoever caught the last wave is in last priority. The next person can choose their wave, because sometimes when you're waiting for waves, the sets come every like 7 minutes or so that you could be sitting there waiting for a wave for ages and you're right beside someone. So to stop the fighting for waves coming into it, they brought in priority. So basically, you know, if you've gotten a wave last, then the other person will have priority. and they can go pick whatever wave they want to go for next. If they don't pick it, then you can go. So there's lots of like little tiny rules like that, but they basically score you on like speed, flow, power, level of difficulty, kind of stuff like that. So turns and, you know, all the really pro surfers like airs and stuff like that. So barrels.
Yeah. And I always kind of think about the idea of, have you ever really been unlucky and just you could be out there for 20 minutes and not just nothing happened? Because it's one of the sports where you're really relying on something, you know, to happen out of your.
For sure. Like I'm actually much better as a free surfer than I would be as a competitive surfer. I just feel like maybe people create their own luck, but I really feel like I've had a lot of bad luck in heats where I do kind of like end up like, you know, going for the wrong waves or like waves not coming my way. But yeah, like that's part of it, I suppose. And maybe, you know, there is some heat strategies you can do to try not let that happen. But yeah, it can really sometimes just be down to luck. Like sometimes, especially like in Ireland, they put us out in surf. Sometimes it's amazing, but sometimes they have to run it into the surf that's not that amazing. So it's nobody's fault, but the competition was set for this day. So you kind of have to run it regardless. So it could be like really rubbish surf, and it really is a matter of who gets lucky enough that their ripple is slightly better than my ripple, or you know, like it's kind of like who gets the wiggle on the surfboard. But most of the time the competitions are a higher standard than that. It's just you can get really unlucky, or you can be in a heat where it is a game of luck in a sense. But usually when you go away to the bigger contests, it can be a little bit kind of, yeah, they'll kind of wait for like the better days because they have like a waiting period sometimes. But yeah, I've only done a handful of the international ones. But when I watch a lot of the World Surf League on the WSL tour, and it's interesting because they have waiting periods and they wait for the good surf and stuff like that.
Okay, I see. Yeah, well, that's fair enough. Thank you very much for describing the rules to me. I now know a bit more about surfing, which is good. So you've returned from Bali, and you arrive back in Ireland, and it's the weather is different. Are you a sun seeker?
Yeah, I do love the sun. I mean, I have to be careful because I'm ginger hair, blue eyes,
Okay.
pale skin.
Yeah.
But and obviously my dad passed away and that was skin cancer too, but he was never unsafe in the sun either. But yeah, I just I like both. When I'm away, I love the sun but I do have to kind of avoid it sometimes, or if I get sunburned, you know, it's a bit annoying and in the way, but it's still lovely to be not necessarily sun, but just being in the warm climate. Like you're walking around, it's warm. You can wear t-shirt shorts. I literally wore no shoes on those islands for like 2 months. I had to find my shoes at the end. It was just amazing. Whereas, but yeah, as I mentioned before about the mental health and the water, I really feel like the cold water does that more for me. Like the warm water and the warm countries doesn't do it for me as much as being in the wild Atlantic Ocean, you know, like being in the cold and there's more energy about it, and it's definitely more powerful and energetic in my opinion, for me anyway. I think when I go to a warm country, I'm naturally just kind of more chilled out and happier anyway, because I'm on a break, or I'm surfing and working and just on a bit of a holiday. So when I'm in Ireland, it's my break is the ocean, but it feels different because it's more energetic, it's more wild. You're in kind of like the wild nature. It's a totally different nature setting, I think.
Yeah. Is it all year round for you with surfing?
Yeah, all year round. Yeah.
Which is
like summer in Ireland is not good, and that's generally why I head away for the summer months. If I can. I didn't actually plan on it this year. I just went like a week before I decided I was going, and I'm home now for the winter because we get good waves in Ireland in the winter. We get some of the best waves in Europe actually. The only downside to people visiting from maybe foreign countries is the cold.
Yes, that might be a very more of a shock than a culture shock, really, that cold water for them. I said adventure at the start, and it's really because I saw some of the other things you like to do, the kind of thrill-seeking things you like to do. Is there a bit of an adrenaline junkie in there?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I'm always up for trying anything that has a
Mm,
bit of an adrenaline rush. I haven't had a chance to yet, but I really want to jump out of a plane or do like
of
a base
course.
jump or something cool. Like that's on my to-do list. But yeah, I love I've tow surfed some bigger waves, which has given me like a
What
bigger
what
rush.
is what is that, Toaster?
So you're on your surfboard and a jet ski is towing you in because the wave is too big and
Oh,
fast and powerful to paddle in most cases. So the tow in just helps you get a head start. So you're already like it's like wakeboarding at the back of the boat
right.
until you let go of the rope and then you're on the face of the wave.
Okay.
So it's just like amazing. Like there's some really amazing guys who do it in Ireland. Like I don't do it to that scale, and like they're really cool to watch. And you probably saw that guy on the news last year, Connor. He got one of the biggest waves ever surfed in Ireland.
Mm.
I just did it on a smaller scale in Hawaii in warmer water just to see, and I loved it. But I don't really have the setup or the opportunity here to do it that much because I don't really live up around there and I don't really have like a tow partner or anything. Now, I'm sure if I really wanted to, I could seek it out, but part of me is like, oh, that's a little bit step too far. So yeah, it's just that, and I've tried a little bit of rock climbing and I love hiking. Yeah, I
Mm.
can't remember what I wrote or where you
Well,
read.
no, you're right. You did have those, but there was something to do with the air. I thought there was something to do with, was there skywalking? Is that a thing? No, that's not a thing, is it?
I didn't have that. No.
Have you done anything in the air or high up?
Not that I can remember.
But you're fine. You're completely fine with heights then. That like
Do you know what? I would be if it was something like jumping out of a plane and it was kind of an organized thing, but I don't like being on the edge of a cliff or something where I could
mm,
actually fall and die.
oh yeah, yeah.
But that's more of a fear of like you're so close to something bad happening. Um, but otherwise, no, I like that's different. I feel like I like the rush of
Mm.
things, but
Do you
yeah,
see how we differ? Because you say I wouldn't stand on the edge of a cliff, which I agree with, but you jump out of a plane. And immediately, what I think is, yeah, but that could go wrong.
but that's so organized and
That's true.
you're suited up, ready to go, or
Yeah, yeah, but like, is this? Yeah, this is just showing me to be the pessimist that like the the parachute would not work, so that'd be the end of that. And you know what I mean? I just that's immediately where my thought goes, where you just think of the thrill of it, and which is good. I'm not
Yeah.
criticizing, but it's our different views on things.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe growing up with three brothers made me more, I don't know, like
It look, there could be many things, but like you say, if there is a bit of an adrenaline junkie in you, it's not exactly the place where your mind goes to think
yeah.
that a parachute might not work. So what, like, this question probably doesn't apply to you. I do ask everybody this question as well, but if you ever sit down, because you seem to be on the go all the time, doing your surfing and doing all these things, what do you do when you are relaxing?
Um, I do like to watch movies too, or like,
Good.
chill and watch Netflix,
Mm.
but I don't feel like I have a lot of time to do it, but I do like to go to the gym or do classes or go for walks on the beach or I like to read. I generally like to go for a walk or do a gym class or meet my friends. And then if none of that's happening, then usually like I only sit down really to watch TV at the night
Mm.
before bed, maybe for an hour. But um yeah, that's
Yeah, like it's always an interesting. It's to me, it's almost as interesting as the first two questions we always ask because it's everybody is completely different in what they think of as relaxing.
yeah.
Because I asked you the question, you said to go to the gym, and most people would just be like, "No, we won't be doing that." I I know what you mean by that little hour before bed because everybody needs a chance to kind of wind down and just let the
Yeah, I mean the TV and stuff before bed, like the gym is more so I find like if I feel like if I work remotely now on my laptop,
mm,
so I do need to get up and do like the gym would be relaxing for me in the sense that I'm not doing any work, I'm not on my laptop and you feel great after it. Um you know, but if there's surf, I'll pick the surf over the gym any day. Like I'll always drive by the beach first and make sure there's nothing else I can do before I go to the gym. But like in saying that, I haven't been to the gym in ages because I've just been surfing and been home and working and stuff. But like I do a lot of work. I could work out at home. I'm very self-motivated. Like if I want to do a workout, I can turn it on my TV and do it here. So I actually don't really tend to pay for gym memberships and stuff because I'll just go every now and again when I feel like I need a change. But I like to go swimming as well. I find swimming relaxing because I used to swim competitively, that it's nice to just go and swim, do a little bit of training, but not too intensely. And
can you switch that off, Grace, when you go into the water swimming? Can you switch off that kind of, because you used to do it, like you say, competitively and everything was about times and things like that. Can you go in and just swim like...
I usually go in and I will do a set, like I will make a set up in my head and I'll do it, but like there's no pressure, you don't have to do. I always say that, but you're right, like because I end up like coming out with a big red face and I've pushed myself in the end. But I think that's just the competitiveness in me. Like there's no one in the pool competing with me, but I'm just looking at the clock going, oh, I want to keep doing the same time or beat my time. But sometimes I'll just do a big long swim and not really like look at the clock and just sort of swim.
I used to do a lot of swimming, and it was before I joined the gym I'm in now, and I did again, you know, did a certain amount of length, certain distance, but it was about just, it's something that's very basic, you know, like walking. Once you know how to swim, you know how to swim.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, you can forget about everything else. I think that's the good thing. And like we all go back to like mindfulness, and I go to jiu-jitsu, you go to surfing. All of it is so important, and it's important for somebody, you know, everybody to find something that they can do.
That's it. I think if you just have that one release, like it's definitely surfing for me. And there is some days where I don't want to work out, even though I know, oh, I haven't done surfing in a few days, I should really do. And those are the days where I might go, okay, I'll just turn on a bit of Netflix or something. Like I do have my lazy days, but mostly I'm really energetic, and I'm just like, I always have too much on. I feel like right now I'm also studying a 2-year computer science course just because I felt like it, like no particular reason. And just hoping that it can help me keep working remotely because I love working remotely. But yeah, I think relaxing for me is even if you're just with friends as well, or hanging out or going for a walk or something like that. Doesn't necessarily have to be sitting down doing nothing. Yeah,
that is true. We're not all like me, but yeah, it's finding your own thing. But Grace, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I really appreciate you coming on.
No, thank you.
And if you wouldn't mind, could you stick with me for 2 minutes? I'll close it out. I'll just get a quick photo with you. All right. So to thank everyone else, John for the technical side of things, to the people who helped me do this, my mom, my dad, granddad, Joe Calvin for the music and the logo. So you can subscribe to our YouTube channel if you like, but if you don't want to do that, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Twitter, I don't really use that much, but so we're on Spotify, Apple, Anchor, Google Podcasts, etc. As always, every week, thanks everyone for listening, for tuning in, and once again, Grace, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome, and everybody, we'll see you.